In a world where hostage situations were all too common, one operation stood out among them all. It was a sweltering June day in 1976. Air France Flight 139, en route from Tel Aviv to Paris, was soaring through the skies with 248 passengers. Little did they know, their journey would soon turn into a terrifying ordeal, gripping the world's attention. This is the story of ordinary people caught in a deadly game of terror and a nation's audacious rescue mission. The hijacking was a direct assault on the soul of Israel. The battlefield was the tarmac of a distant airport in Uganda, ruled by Idi Amin. As news spread, fear and anger swept across Israel. Families huddled around radios, clinging to every word. The fate of their loved ones hung in the balance. The stage was set for a daring rescue to save innocent lives and reaffirm the nation's resolve. The 1970s was a decade scarred by the specter of terrorism. From the Munich Olympics massacre to the hijackings of planes, a new breed of terror had emerged, one that deliberately targeted civilians to sow fear and advance political agendas. This was particularly true for the Palestinian struggle. With their homeland occupied and their future uncertain, some Palestinian factions turned to violence, seeking to force the world to pay attention to their plight. The hijacking of Air France Flight 139 was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern of escalating violence. It was a stark reminder of the volatile geopolitical landscape of the time, where Cold War tensions intertwined with regional conflicts, creating a breeding ground for extremism. The Middle East, in particular, was a powder keg, with the Arab-Israeli conflict at its heart. The world struggled to comprehend this new form of warfare, where innocent lives were treated as bargaining chips and the rules of engagement were thrown out the window. The hijacking of Flight 139 was a wake-up call, a stark reminder that the world had entered a new and dangerous era. Flight 139 had taken off from Tel Aviv, making a scheduled stopover in Athens. It was there that the nightmare began. 4 heavily armed terrorists stormed the aircraft. 2 Germans, Wilfried Bose and Brigitte Kuhlmann, and 2 Palestinians took control of the plane. The hijackers herded the terrified passengers to the rear, brandishing weapons and shouting orders. Fear hung heavy in the air. Passengers clung to each other, whispering prayers. The hijackers demanded the release of 53 militants. Their ultimatum was clear: meet our demands or face the consequences. The hijacked plane became a microcosm of the larger conflict. The atmosphere inside the aircraft was tense. The hijackers seemed indifferent to the plight of their hostages. The plane was forced to change course. It touched down in Benghazi, Libya, for refueling. The hijacked Air France flight finally landed at Entebbe International Airport in Uganda, a country ruled by the erratic and ruthless dictator Idi Amin. Amin, who had seized power in a military coup in 1971, had become notorious for his brutality, his megalomania, and his blatant disregard for human rights. His regime was responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of Ugandans, and his erratic behavior had made him an international pariah. Amin, however, saw an opportunity in the hijacking. Publicly, he presented himself as a mediator, offering to negotiate the hostages' release. In reality, he was playing a dangerous game, aligning himself with the terrorists and using the hostage crisis to bolster his own standing on the world stage. Amin welcomed the hijackers with open arms, providing them with logistical support and safe haven. He appeared at the airport, dressed in his military regalia, surrounded by his troops, basking in the media spotlight. The arrival of the hostages in Uganda added a dangerous new dimension to the crisis. Entebbe Airport, now a hostage prison, became a focal point of international attention. The world held its breath, watching as the drama unfolded in the heart of Africa. Amin's motivations were complex and driven by a combination of factors. The hijacking of Flight 139 triggered a frenzy of diplomatic activity. Governments around the world scrambled to respond, caught off guard by the audacity of the terrorists and the complex web of international relations that the crisis had ensnared. France, as the country of the hijacked aircraft, took the lead in the negotiations. However, the terrorists' demands, including the release of dozens of convicted criminals from prisons across the globe, proved to be a major stumbling block. Israel, for its part, refused to negotiate with terrorists, fearing that doing so would only encourage further attacks. the Israeli government found itself in a moral and political quagmire. On the one hand, they were acutely aware of the danger their citizens were in, held hostage by ruthless terrorists thousands of miles away. On the other hand, they were deeply reluctant to give in to terrorist demands, fearing that it would set a dangerous precedent and only embolden their enemies. As days turned into nights, the situation in Entebbe grew increasingly precarious. The hostages, exhausted, terrified, and running out of hope, endured unbearable conditions inside the dilapidated old terminal building. While diplomats engaged in frantic negotiations, a different kind of operation was taking shape in Israel. As hope for a peaceful resolution dwindled, the Israeli government made a momentous decision. They would launch a daring rescue mission to bring their people home. It was a decision fraught with risk, a gamble on a scale never before attempted. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, a seasoned military man, knew full well the gravity of the situation. He understood the risks involved in such an operation, the logistical challenges of mounting a long-distance raid, the uncertainty of intelligence, the possibility of failure, and the potential for heavy casualties, both among the hostages and the soldiers tasked with rescuing them. Yet, he also recognized that time was running out and that the lives of over 100 Israeli citizens hung in the balance. The decision to launch a rescue mission was not taken lightly. It was the culmination of days of agonizing debate within the Israeli cabinet. In the end, the decision to act came down to a simple but powerful belief: Israel would not abandon its citizens, no matter the cost. With the decision made, the Israeli Defense Forces sprang into action. Time was of the essence, and every minute counted. The task fell upon the shoulders of the IDF's elite unit, the Sayeret Matkal, renowned for their skill, courage, and unwavering determination. They were tasked with the impossible: to plan and execute a rescue mission thousands of miles away, in the heart of enemy territory, against an unpredictable dictator and ruthless terrorists. The planning for Operation Thunderbolt, as it was codenamed, was a race against time. The IDF had limited intelligence about the situation on the ground in Entebbe. The layout of the airport, the number of terrorists, their weaponry, the exact location of the hostages, all these crucial details were shrouded in uncertainty. The planners worked day and night, poring over satellite images, analyzing every scrap of information, and meticulously piecing together the puzzle. The success of the mission hinged on secrecy, surprise, and precision. The IDF knew they had only one shot at this, and failure was not an option. The stakes were incredibly high, and the pressure was immense. Yet, the Israeli commandos, hardened by years of training and driven by an unwavering sense of duty, approached the task with grim determination. On the night of July 3, 1976, under the cover of darkness, 4 Israeli C-130 Hercules transport planes, their cargo holds filled with heavily armed commandos, took off from Sharm el-Sheikh. The operation, shrouded in secrecy, was already underway. The planes flew low over the Red Sea, hugging the African coastline, their pilots expertly navigating the perilous journey, avoiding commercial air traffic and evading enemy radar. The commandos, led by the steely-nerved Lieutenant Colonel Yonatan Netanyahu, were on edge, their faces grim, their weapons ready. They knew the dangers that lay ahead, the possibility of walking into a trap, the risk of being outnumbered and outgunned. Yet they were prepared to face any challenge, to make the ultimate sacrifice to bring their people home. The planes landed at Entebbe Airport in the dead of night, their arrival masked by the darkness. The commandos, their faces blackened, their weapons silenced, fanned out across the tarmac, moving with stealth and precision. The raid was swift and brutal. Now that you've seen how the stage was set, make sure to like this video and comment below if you want to learn more about how Israel's elite forces carried out one of the most dangerous rescue missions in history. Let's jump into the heart-pounding moment when the operation went into action. The raid on Entebbe lasted just 90 minutes, but in that brief but intense period, the course of history was changed. The Israeli commandos, displaying extraordinary courage and skill, achieved the impossible. They neutralized the terrorists, secured the release of the hostages, and escaped back to Israel, leaving behind a trail of stunned Ugandan soldiers and the shattered remnants of Amin's hubris. Of the 106 hostages held in the terminal building, 102 were rescued. 3 hostages lost their lives during the raid, along with one Israeli commando, Yonatan Netanyahu, the older brother of future Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The raid on Entebbe was a resounding tactical victory, but it came at a heavy price. The world reacted with a mixture of shock and admiration. Here, for the first time, a nation had shown that it was willing to go to extraordinary lengths to protect its citizens from terrorism. The legacy of Operation Thunderbolt extends far beyond the immediate events of that day.